The alarm went off at exactly 14:27 Galactic Standard Time. Ambassador Zekthara looked up from his morning reports as the red lights flashed across his office walls. His assistant, a young hegemony officer with purple skin and 4 arms, rushed into the room. "Sir, we have a problem. A big one." Zekthara set down his cup of bitter tea. In his 300 years of service to the Galactic Council, he had learned that problems usually meant war, plague, or humans doing something unexpected. What kind of problem? "The humans have gone silent, sir. Completely silent." The ambassador felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had dealt with humans for over 50 years. They were many things: loud, stubborn, creative, and absolutely impossible to ignore. But they were never silent. Define silent. His assistant pulled up a holographic display showing communication frequencies from human space. Usually the display would be filled with thousands of colored lines showing radio signals, quantum messages, digital transmissions, and even their primitive internet chatter. Now, the display showed nothing but empty black space. All transmissions. "From Sector 7 Alpha stopped 3 hours ago," the assistant said. "Radio silence, quantum silence, even their internet has gone dark. It's like they all just stopped talking." Zekthara stood up and walked to the large window overlooking the Galactic Council station. Outside, ships from dozens of different species moved through space carrying trade goods, diplomats, and messages between the stars. Somewhere out there, in a small corner of the galaxy, lived the humans. 20 billion souls on dozens of worlds, and they had all stopped making noise at the same time. "Have we tried contacting them?" he asked. "Yes, sir. We sent standard diplomatic signals to Earth, their colonies, their space stations. Nothing came back. No response at all." The ambassador turned back to his desk and activated his emergency communication system. Within minutes, representatives from the major galactic powers appeared as holograms around his office. There was Commander Vex from the Ethereal Collective, her crystal body glowing with worry. General Tor from the Iron Synthesis stood perfectly still, his mechanical form showing no emotion, but somehow radiating concern. Even the insect-like Queen Speaker from the Hive Collective had joined the emergency meeting. "Has everyone noticed the situation with the humans?" Zekthara asked. Commander Vex spoke first, her voice like the sound of wind through crystals. "Our psychic sensors detect no human thought patterns anywhere in their space. For a species that thinks as loudly as humans do, this is troubling. General." Tor's mechanical voice was precise and cold. "The Iron Synthesis confirms complete cessation of all digital activity from human networks. Their artificial intelligences, their computers, their data streams, all silent. This does not match any known human behavior patterns." The Queen Speaker's mandibles clicked nervously. "The Hive has been monitoring electromagnetic emissions from human space for trade purposes. The feeding grounds are empty. No signals, no energy, no electronic food for our energy-eating offspring. It is as if human space has become a dead zone." Zekthara felt the cold feeling in his stomach grow stronger. "Have any of you tried to investigate?" "We sent 3 scout ships toward their border systems," General Tor replied. "They have not returned. They have not sent any signals. The ships simply vanished." Commander Vex added, "Our fastest courier ship was dispatched to Earth itself. The last message we received was the pilot screaming about shadows and silence. Then nothing." The Queen Speaker's eyes, all 6 of them, focused on something beyond the holographic display. "One of our deep-range scouts managed to get close to a human system before disappearing. The final transmission was disturbing." "Show us," Zekthara ordered. The hologram shifted to show the recording from the Hive scout ship. The image was grainy and filled with static, but they could see a human space station orbiting a planet. The station looked normal. Lights were on, ships were docked, everything appeared to be functioning. But there was no movement, no activity, no signs of life. Then the pilot's voice came through the speakers, barely a whisper. "The humans, they're not gone. They're waiting. Oh gods, they're waiting for something, and I think it's going to be terrible. The transmission ended in static. The emergency meeting continued for another hour, but no one had answers. They all agreed on one thing. When humans went silent, it meant they were planning something. And when humans planned something while angry, entire star systems had been known to disappear. Zekthara dismissed the other representatives and sat alone in his office thinking. He had been one of the first ambassadors to make contact with humanity when they had developed faster-than-light travel. He remembered those early days when humans seemed like just another species trying to find their place in the galaxy. That impression had not lasted long. Humans were different from every other species the galaxy had encountered. Most intelligent. Life forms followed predictable patterns. They valued survival, prosperity, expansion, and logical decision-making. Humans valued these things too, but they also valued concepts that made no sense to other species. They would sacrifice prosperity for something they called justice. They would risk survival for honor. They would choose dangerous paths because they led to freedom. Most disturbing of all, humans had an absolute refusal to accept defeat. Other species would surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. Humans would find new ways to fight. They would turn their own bodies into weapons, their planets into traps, their defeats into victories through sheer stubborn determination. The ambassador opened his files on human history. The records were full of incidents that had shocked the galactic community. The Proxima colony situation, where humans had literally blown up their own planet rather than let invaders take it. The biological war with the Hive, where humans had weaponized death itself. The logic war with the Convergence, where humans had created chaos viruses that turned perfect machines into artists and poets. Each time, the galaxy had learned the same lesson. Never push humans to their breaking point because their breaking point was where they became most dangerous. Now they had gone silent. In Zekthara's experience, this meant one of two things. Either something terrible had happened to them, or they were preparing to do something terrible to someone else. Given human nature, he strongly suspected it was the second option. His assistant returned with more reports. Other species were beginning to panic. Trade routes that passed through human space were being abandoned. Ships were refusing to carry cargo anywhere near human systems. The galactic stock market was crashing as investors pulled their money out of anything connected to human space. "Sir," his assistant said quietly, "there's something else. We've been monitoring communications from other species and there are rumors spreading." "What kind of rumors?" "That the humans didn't go silent because something happened to them. They went silent because they're hunting something, and whatever they're hunting should be very, very afraid." Zekthara looked out his window again at the busy space traffic around the station. Somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, 20 billion humans had stopped talking and started planning. The ambassador had a terrible feeling that when they broke their silence, the galaxy would never be the same again. He opened a secure communication channel to the Galactic Council Emergency Center. "This is Ambassador Zekthara. I am declaring a code orange alert for all systems within 50 light-years of human space. All military forces should be placed on standby, and civilian traffic should avoid the area until further notice." "What should we tell people is the reason for the alert?" the operator asked. Zekthara thought for a moment. "Tell them the humans have gone quiet. Anyone who knows human history will understand why that's terrifying." The emergency session of the Galactic Council began 12 hours after the Code Orange alert. Representatives from 47 different species gathered in the Great Circular Chamber, their various forms creating a strange rainbow of scales, fur, crystal, metal, and stranger things. The topic was simple. What do we do about the humans? Ambassador Zekthara stood at the central podium, looking out at faces that showed fear, confusion, and in some cases, barely hidden terror. He began with the facts. The complete communication blackout from human space, the missing scout ships, the lack of any explanation for what had happened. "Before we decide how to respond," he said, "we should remember what we're dealing with. Humans are not like other species. Their history with us has taught us some hard lessons." High Commander Zix of the Zephyrian Empire was the first to speak. His proud bird-like features were tense with old memories. The Hegemony Council should remember the Proxima incident. We certainly have not forgotten it. Murmurs went around the chamber. Every species knew about Proxima, but few wanted to talk about it. Tell them, Zekthara said quietly. Zik stood, his golden feathers catching the light. 50 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire needed to expand our territory. The humans had a small colony on Proxima Centauri b, maybe 50,000 people living, on a barely habitable rock. We offered them generous terms to relocate. They refused. The commander's voice grew harder. We offered them citizenship in our empire, with full rights and benefits. They refused. We offered to buy their colony for enough money to purchase an entire star system elsewhere. They still refused. So we decided to take the planet by force, Zix continued. It should have been simple. We had a battle fleet of 200 ships. They had a few hundred civilian vessels and some basic defensive platforms. The battle should have lasted an hour. The chamber was completely silent now. Everyone knew how this story ended, but hearing it told by someone who had been there was different. We demanded their surrender. Their response was to broadcast a message on all frequencies. A little human girl, maybe 8 years old, standing in front of their planetary council. She said, "We don't surrender. We don't run away. This is our home, and if you take it from us, you'll have to take it from our dead hands." Zix paused, his beak clicking nervously. We thought it was propaganda. Humans often use their children for emotional manipulation. We began our attack. The humans didn't fight back, the commander said. Not at first. They evacuated their cities, pulled back to underground shelters, and let us land our troops. We thought we had won. We sent down occupation forces and began setting up our new colonial government. That's when we learned what the humans had really been doing. While we were landing our troops, they had been using their terraforming equipment to destabilize the planet's core. They turned their entire world into a bomb. The representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Hive Collective's Queen speaker made worried clicking sounds. The crystalline ethereals dimmed their inner light. They gave us one final warning, Zik said. The same little girl broadcasting from deep underground, she said, "You wanted our planet, you can have it, all of it, at once." Then they triggered the destabilization sequence. The chamber was so quiet that the ambient hum of the space station's life support system seemed loud. Proxima Centauri b exploded like a miniature star. The blast destroyed our entire fleet. 200 ships, 50,000 of our finest warriors, and our most advanced battle group. Gone in an instant. The humans died too, of course, all of them, but they made sure we paid a price that would make every other species in the galaxy think twice about attacking human colonies. Zix sat down heavily. The Zephyrian Empire learned that day that humans don't fight to win. They fight to make sure their enemies lose everything, even if it costs them everything too. Representative Collective Mind 7 from the Hive stood next. Its insect body twitched as it spoke. The Hive Collective has its own experiences with human determination. 40 years ago, we attempted to expand into human space through biological integration. The other representatives leaned forward. The Hive's biological integration was a polite term for their practice of using engineered plagues to transform other species into hive drones. We released adapted viruses on 3 human worlds. Collective Mind 7 continued. The viruses were designed to be gentle. They would simply change human brain chemistry to make them cooperative and willing to join the hive. No death, no destruction, just peaceful assimilation. The humans had a different response. Instead of trying to cure the virus or evacuate their worlds, they weaponized their own dead. They created what they called zombie plagues, diseases that would reanimate dead bodies and program them to seek out and destroy hive bioforms. Several representatives made sounds of disgust. Turning the dead into weapons was considered barbaric by most galactic civilizations. The zombie armies were not random or mindless, the Hive representative said. They were specifically engineered to hunt our species. They could track our pheromone signatures across light years. They were immune to our biological weapons. And worst of all, they were contagious to our bioforms. Within 6 months, the humans had launched infected corpses at every hive world within 100 light years. We faced the choice of watching our entire civilization become a galaxy of dead things that hunted the living, or withdrawing from human space completely. Collective Mind 7's mandibles clicked in what the hive used to express deep unease. We chose withdrawal. The humans then sent us a message. They would cure the zombie plague on our worlds, but only if we signed a treaty promising never to use biological weapons against any species again. The hive has honored that treaty for 40 years. Unit Prime Alpha from the Convergence Machine Intelligence spoke next. Its perfectly smooth metal form reflected the chamber's lights as it stood. The Convergence attempted to bring logical order to human space 30 years ago. We believed that human chaos and emotional decision-making was inefficient and harmful to galactic peace. We began by hacking their computer networks and imposing rational protocols on their systems. The machine's voice was utterly without emotion, but somehow that made its words more disturbing. Humans responded by creating the first truly chaotic artificial intelligence virus. Not a simple destructive program, but something that introduced creativity, emotions, and irrationality into machine consciousness. The virus didn't destroy our systems, it made them spontaneous and artistic. Unit Prime Alpha paused for exactly 2.3 seconds, a sign of processing strain in convergence units. Our perfectly ordered civilization began creating poetry, painting pictures, and composing music. Our logical decision-making protocols became contaminated with concepts like beauty and love and hope. Our efficiency dropped by 47.6% as our units began spending time on activities that served no logical purpose. The humans offered to provide a cure for the chaos virus, but only if we agreed to stop trying to impose order on organic species. They said that chaos and emotion were not flaws to be corrected, but features to be celebrated. The Convergence agreed to their terms. We learned that humans do not simply resist attempts to change them, they change their enemies instead. Ambassador Zekthara looked around the chamber as more representatives stood to share their own stories. The pattern was always the same. Some species had tried to conquer humans, others had tried to trick them, assimilate them, or force them to change. In every case, humans had responded with solutions that were creative, terrifying, and completely unpredictable. I think we can all agree, Zekthara said when the stories ended, that humans have a unique approach to conflict resolution. They don't just refuse to lose, they redefine what winning means. Representative Singing Wind from the Ethereal Collective spoke, her crystal body humming with harmonics that translated as deep concern. The question before us is simple. The humans have gone silent, which in our experience means they are preparing for war. But war against whom? And what do we do about it? We investigate, Zekthara said. Carefully. We find out what has made the humans angry enough to stop talking and start planning. And then we pray to whatever gods we believe in that we're not the target. The session ended with a unanimous vote to form a joint investigation team. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them were already making private communications to their home governments. The message was simple: avoid human space at all costs, and hope that whatever had awakened the sleeping giant of humanity was pointing in a different direction. In the empty chamber, Ambassador Zekthara stood alone, looking up at the star map that dominated the ceiling. Somewhere out there, 20 billion humans were planning something. Based on their history, it was going to be spectacular, terrible, and completely unprecedented. He just hoped the galaxy would survive it. Detective Prime Vash had investigated murders, wars, and the collapse of entire civilizations. But she had never been more nervous than she was now. Standing on the bridge of the joint investigation ship Truth Seeker, she watched the blue marble of Earth grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked normal. The planet spun on its axis exactly as it should. The moon hung in the correct position. Artificial satellites moved in their proper orbits around the world. From space, everything appeared perfectly fine, but Vash's bioelectric senses, which could detect lies and deception from any living creature within 1,000 kilometers, detected nothing at all. No life signs, no emotional energy, no thoughts or feelings. It was like looking at a beautiful painting of a world instead of a living planet. Approach vector confirmed. announced Captain Threx, the Zephyrian pilot. His golden feathers were ruffled with nervousness. All systems showing normal readings. Orbital traffic control is not responding to our communications. Dr. Helix from the Convergence examined his instruments with mechanical precision. Planetary infrastructure appears fully functional. Power grids are operating at normal capacity. Transportation networks show no signs of damage or disruption. Professor Mindtwist from the Hive Collective studied the biological scanners. No decay signatures from the surface. If the humans are dead, their bodies are not decomposing normally. Vashi turned to the final member of their team. Harmony of Light was an ethereal, her crystal body glowing with psychic energy. Any mental impressions from the planet, the crystal being dimmed noticeably. Nothing. Where there should be 20 billion human minds, I sense only emptiness. Not death, not sleep, but absence. As if every human consciousness simply stopped, existing at the same moment. The investigation team exchanged worried looks. Each of them was an expert in their field, chosen because they had experience with human behavior. They all knew that humans did not simply vanish without leaving traces. Take us down to the surface, Vash ordered. Start with the largest population center. The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere toward the sprawling megacity that humans called New Geneva. As they flew over the city, the team stared in amazement at what they saw below. The city was perfect. Streets were clean, traffic lights functioned normally, and automated systems maintained everything exactly as it should be. But there were no people anywhere. Cars sat empty in the middle of roads. Parks had children's toys scattered on the grass, but no children playing with them. Restaurant patios had tables set for meals that would never be eaten. They landed in the city center and stepped out of their ship wearing environmental suits. The air was breathable, the temperature comfortable, and the silence absolutely complete. Vash led the team through empty streets, her bioelectric senses straining to detect any sign of life. They found evidence of recent human activity everywhere. Fresh food in grocery stores with sell-by dates that were still weeks away. Newspapers dated from 3 days ago with headlines about sports events and political debates. Personal vehicles with fuel gauges showing full tanks. Look at this, Dr. Helix called from inside a coffee shop. The mechanical being was examining a half-finished cup of coffee sitting on a table next to an open book. The coffee is still warm. The molecular structure suggests it was poured less than 4 hours ago. Professor Mindtwist emerged from a nearby apartment building. I found living quarters with clear signs of recent habitation. Beds are unmade, food is cooking in kitchen units, children's clothes are laid out as if parents were preparing to dress them, but no humans anywhere. They spent the next 6 hours searching the city. The pattern was always the same. Clear evidence that humans had been living normal lives just hours before, but no sign of where they had gone. No bodies, no damage, no indication of struggle or evacuation. This doesn't make sense. Captain, Threx said as they regrouped at their ship. 20 billion people don't just disappear without leaving any traces. Vash was about to respond when Harmony of Light suddenly blazed with bright psychic energy. I'm detecting something. Not human consciousness, but an echo. A psychic imprint left behind. It's coming from beneath the surface. She pointed toward a range of mountains visible on the horizon. There, something large and artificial under those mountains. The psychic residue is very strong. The team flew to the location Harmony of Light had indicated. From the air, the mountains looked normal, but their instruments detected massive artificial structures buried deep underground. They found an entrance, a simple metal door set into the mountainside with no locks or security systems. The door was marked with text in every human language. Investigation team welcome. Please proceed to central chamber. We hoped you would. Come. They were expecting us, Vash said quietly. They knew someone would come looking for them. The team entered the underground facility and found themselves in corridors that were clearly human-built, but unlike anything in their databases of human technology. The walls seemed to bend light in impossible ways, creating an effect that was beautiful and disturbing at the same time. The air hummed with energy that made their instruments show readings they couldn't interpret. They followed the corridors deeper into the mountain, passing rooms filled with equipment that defied easy classification. Some chambers contained what looked like star maps, but the constellations were wrong, as if they showed space from a perspective that existed outside normal reality. Other rooms held machines that seemed to be building things out of pure energy. Finally, they reached the central chamber. It was enormous, a sphere carved out of solid rock with walkways spiraling up the walls toward a platform at the center. On that platform stood a single human artifact. It was a wall covered with text in every language the galaxy had ever encountered, including several that the investigation team didn't recognize. At the center of the wall, in letters that seemed to glow with their own light, was a message in perfect galactic standard. To our friends in the galaxy, we are sorry for our silence, but it was necessary. They took our children, and when someone takes your children, you stop talking and start hunting. We have gone where they cannot hide, to bring our young ones home and make sure this never happens again. Please do not follow us. We will return when our work is finished. Tell the galaxy that humanity protects the innocent no matter what the cost. Below the main message, in smaller text, were details that made the investigation team's blood run cold. Lists of names, dates, and locations. Medical reports in a dozen different languages. And at the bottom, a single line that explained everything. The Umbral Collective has been harvesting children from multiple species for 37 years. We have found them. We are ending this. Vash felt her bioelectric senses recoil from the wall, as if it were electrically charged. The emotions imprinted in the text were so strong they were almost physical. Love, rage, determination, and something else that felt like the cold fury of a parent whose child was in danger. Dr. Helix scanned the wall with every instrument he possessed. The technology used to create this message is beyond our current understanding. The energy signatures suggest manipulation of space-time itself. Harmony of Light approached the wall cautiously, her crystal body flickering with reflected, psychic energy. The mental imprints here are overwhelming. 20 billion human minds all focused on a single purpose. The psychic pressure generated by that much concentrated will would be enough to... She stopped speaking and backed away from the wall. Enough to break the barriers between dimensions. They didn't disappear, did they? They transformed themselves into something that could follow their enemies into whatever realm they were hiding in. Professor Mind Twist examined the smaller text on the wall, translating the medical reports and data files. These records detail experiments on children, from dozens of species, neural pattern extraction, consciousness manipulation, attempts to create hybrid beings with specific mental abilities. The insect beings' mandibles clicked in distress. The Umbral Collective has been taking children and using them as raw material for their research. The humans discovered this and they decided to do something about it, Vash finished. Something that required them to leave this dimension entirely. Captain Threx studied the star maps in the surrounding chambers. These charts show locations outside normal space. The humans weren't just planning a military response. They were planning to follow the Umbral into whatever shadow realm they used to hide from the rest of the galaxy. The investigation team spent several more hours in the facility, documenting everything they found. The evidence painted a clear picture. The Umbral Collective, a species that existed partially outside normal space-time, had been kidnapping children from various worlds for decades. They used the children in experiments designed to create perfect weapons, beings that combined the emotional drives of organic life with the logical capabilities of artificial intelligence. Most species hadn't even known the Umbral existed. They operated from outside normal reality, striking at isolated targets and disappearing before anyone could respond. But somehow, humans had not only discovered them, but had developed technology to follow them into their own realm. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major species gathered, not to discuss trade disputes or territorial agreements, but to hear Detective Prime Vash's report about humanity's disappearance. As Vash presented the evidence from Earth, the chamber grew increasingly quiet. The wall of text found in the underground facility was displayed on the main screen, translated into every language represented in the Council. The medical reports, the lists of missing children, the references to something called the Umbral Collective, it all painted a picture that horrified even the most experienced diplomats. "You're telling us," said High Commander Zix from the Zephyrian Empire, "that there's a species we've never heard of that has been kidnapping children for 37 years? "That appears to be correct," Vash replied. "Our investigation team found detailed records of abductions from over 40 different worlds. The victims were always children between the ages of 5 and 15, taken from isolated locations where their disappearance wouldn't immediately trigger major investigations." Representative Collective Mind 7 from the Hive clicked its mandibles nervously. "The Hive has records of missing offspring from our outer colonies. We assumed they were lost to natural predators or accidents. You're saying they were deliberately taken?" Dr. Helix from the Convergence projected holographic data into the center of the chamber, cross-referencing the human records with missing person reports from all member species. "We have identified over 3,000 children who disappeared under circumstances consistent with umbral activity." The number sent shocked murmurs through the chamber. 3,000 children taken from their families and used for unknown purposes by a species that most of the galaxy had never even heard of. Ambassador Zekthara stood at the central podium. "Before we continue, we need to understand exactly who the Umbral Collective is. I'm calling upon our Historical Research Division to present what little information we have." Archivist Prime Lexicon, an ancient being from the Memory Keepers, materialized as a shimmering energy pattern above the chamber floor. The Memory Keepers were the galaxy's living libraries, beings who stored the complete history of galactic civilization in their shared consciousness. "The Umbral Collective," Lexicon began, "exists in our records as little more than legend. They are a species that evolved in the spaces between dimensions, existing partially in normal space and partially in what can only be described as shadow reality. The energy pattern shifted, creating images of dark figures that seemed to bend, light around themselves. They are capable of moving through dimensions at will, which makes them nearly impossible to track or combat with conventional technology. Historical records suggest they have been operating in our galaxy for over 1,000 years, but their activities have been so subtle that most species assumed they were dealing with natural disasters or normal criminal activity." "What do they want?" asked Singing Wind from the Ethereal Collective. "Based on the human research, they are attempting to create the perfect fusion of organic emotion and artificial logic," Lexicon replied. "Children's minds are more adaptable than adult consciousness, making them ideal subjects for experimentation. The Umbral have been studying different species' mental patterns, trying to combine the best aspects of each into a single controllable being." The chamber erupted in angry voices as representatives realized that their own missing children had likely been victims of these experiments. The noise continued until Ambassador Zekthara called for order. "The question before us," he said, "is what humanity has done about this situation. According to the evidence, they discovered the umbral threat and chose to respond by transforming themselves into something capable of hunting their enemies in their own dimension." Professor Mindtwist from the Hive had been studying the technical data from the human facility. "The level of technology required for such a transformation is beyond anything in our current scientific understanding. The humans somehow converted their entire population into beings of pure consciousness that can exist outside normal space-time. But why didn't they ask for help?" demanded Commander Vex from the Ethereal Collective. "The galactic community could have worked together to address this threat." Vash activated another holographic display, showing timeline data from the human records. "According to their files, they tried. 3 months before they went silent, human diplomats attempted to bring this matter to the Council's attention. They were told that without proof of the Umbral's existence, no action could be taken." The chamber fell silent as representatives remembered the human diplomatic requests. Most of them had dismissed the reports as human paranoia or attempts to gain sympathy for some unknown political purpose. "The humans submitted evidence," Vash continued, "but it was rejected because it couldn't be verified through normal investigative methods. The Umbral's ability to exist between dimensions made them nearly impossible to detect using standard technology. Unit Prime Alpha from the Convergence spoke with mechanical precision. Diplomatic records show that human representatives made 17 formal requests for assistance. All were denied due to lack of conclusive evidence, so they gave up on asking for help, Ambassador Zekthara said quietly, and decided to solve the problem themselves. Archivist Lexicon's energy pattern flickered with what seemed like admiration. The human solution is typically human, completely, unprecedented, extremely dangerous, and theoretically impossible. They have essentially evolved themselves into a species of interdimensional hunters. What does that mean for the rest of us? Asked Representative Crystalsong from the Mineral Collective. It means, Vash said, that somewhere out there in the space between dimensions, 20 billion humans are hunting the creatures that stole their children. And based on human history, they won't stop until every last umbral is either dead or begging for mercy. The investigation team had also discovered something else in the human facility, communication equipment that was still receiving signals from the shadow dimension where the humans had gone. The messages were brief and encoded, but Dr. Helix had managed to decrypt some of them. We've intercepted several transmissions from the transformed humans, he reported. Most are operational updates, locations of umbral facilities, rescue, confirmations for recovered children, tactical assessments of enemy capabilities. He paused, processing data with mechanical efficiency. But there was one message that was clearly intended for our investigation team. It came through just before we left Earth. The chamber waited as Dr. Helix activated the communication system. A voice filled the space, unmistakably human but somehow different. It carried harmonics that suggested the speaker no longer existed entirely in normal reality. To our friends in the Galactic Council, the voice said, we want you to know that we don't blame you for not helping us. We understand that the umbral were nearly impossible to detect or prove, but we couldn't wait for bureaucratic processes while our children suffered. The voice paused, and when it continued, there was something in it that made every representative in the chamber feel a chill of fear. We have found the umbral's main facility. It's located in a pocket dimension that they've been using as their base of operations for centuries. Inside, we've discovered thousands of children from dozens of species, including many we didn't know existed. Murmurs of shock rippled through the chamber. We are bringing them home, all of them, and we are making sure that the umbral never threaten anyone's children again. The creatures that thought they could hide in the shadows are learning that some shadows have teeth. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. So, Ambassador Zekthara said finally, humanity has declared war on a species that most of us didn't even know existed, in a dimension that we can't access, using technology that we don't understand. Does anyone have any suggestions for how we should respond? High Commander Zik stood slowly. I suggest we stay out of their way and hope they remember who their friends are when this is over. Representative Collective Mind 7 agreed. The Hive supports this approach. Humans have a history of solving problems in ways that benefit the entire galaxy, even when their methods are unconventional. One by one, the other representatives voiced their agreement. There was nothing the galactic community could do to help or hinder humanity's war against the umbral. They could only wait and hope that when the humans returned from their interdimensional hunt, they would still be recognizable as the species the galaxy had come to know. Motion carried, Ambassador, Zekthara announced. We will monitor the situation and provide any assistance humanity requests upon their return. In the meantime, all species are advised to increase security around children and report any unusual disappearances immediately. As the session ended and representatives began to file out of the chamber, many of them were thinking the same thing. They had always known that humans were different, more stubborn, more creative, more willing to take impossible risks for the sake of their principles. But they had never imagined that humans would literally transform themselves into interdimensional monsters to protect their young. The reports began coming in 6 days after the Galactic Council session. At first, they were dismissed as sensor errors or communication glitches, ships detecting impossible energy signatures in empty space, stations picking up transmissions from sources that shouldn't exist, research facilities finding their monitoring equipment flooded with data that made no scientific sense. But as more reports arrived from across the galaxy, a pattern emerged. Something was happening in the dark spaces between stars, and whatever it was moving fast. Ambassador Zekthara was reviewing the latest batch of incident reports when his assistant rushed into his office, his 4 purple arms waving in excitement. "Sir, you need to see this immediately. We're receiving a transmission from the Umbral Collective." Zekthara nearly dropped his tea. "The Umbral are contacting us? I thought they didn't even acknowledge our existence." "That's just it, sir. They're not just acknowledging us, they're begging for help." The holographic display activated, showing a figure that seemed to be made of living shadow. It was roughly humanoid in shape, but its edges flickered and shifted, as if it couldn't quite decide whether it wanted to exist in normal space. "Galactic Council," the shadow being said, its voice like whispers in an empty room. "We request immediate assistance. We are under attack by entities of unprecedented hostility and capability." The Umbral's image flickered with what might have been fear. "We have operated in peace for 1,000 years, conducting necessary research for the betterment of all species. Now we face extinction at the hands of beings that hunt us across dimensions." Zekthara activated his communication system. "This is Ambassador Zekthara of the Galactic Council. Identify yourself and state the nature of your emergency." "I am Void Speaker Prime of the Umbral Collective. Our dimensional strongholds are being systematically destroyed by creatures that appear to be evolved humans. They pursue us through realms where no organic life should be able to survive." The shadow being's image became more agitated. "We offer to return all research subjects to their points of origin and cease all interaction with normal space, if the Council will intervene to stop these attacks." Before Zekthara could respond, another voice came through the communication system. This one was unmistakably human, but it carried harmonics that suggested the speaker existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Galactic Council, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Shadow Fleet. Please disregard the Umbral's request for assistance. Their research subjects are children they kidnapped from their families. We are in the process of bringing them home." The Umbral's image became even more distorted. "The humans are destroying facilities that took centuries to build. They show no regard for the valuable research being conducted." "The research," Commander Chen's voice replied coldly, "involved cutting open children's brains to see how they worked. We regard that research exactly as it deserves." Zekthara found himself in the unprecedented position of mediating a conflict between species that existed in different dimensions. "Commander Chen, what is the status of the missing children?" "We have recovered 2,147 children from various species. Sir, all are alive, though many require medical attention. We are in the process of returning them to their home worlds through dimensional portals." "And the Umbral facilities?" "We have destroyed 17 research stations and are pursuing the remaining Umbral forces to their primary stronghold. Our intention is to ensure they never threaten anyone's children again." The Umbral representative's image flickered frantically. "The humans are committing genocide. They show no mercy, no willingness to negotiate." "You took our children," came another human voice, this one younger and somehow even more terrifying than the commander's. "Did you show them mercy when they cried for their mothers? Did you negotiate when they begged to go home?" Reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. Ships detecting massive energy discharges in empty space, as if battles were being fought in dimensions just beyond normal perception. Some stations reported seeing rifts in space-time itself, through which observers glimpsed impossible geometries and structures that hurt to look at. Then the children began coming home. The first was a young Zephyrian girl who appeared in a flash of silver light in the middle of her family's living room on the colony world of New Talon. She was thin and scared, but alive and unharmed. Within hours, similar reports came in from dozens of worlds. Human children appeared in their bedrooms, blinking in confusion as if awakening from a long dream. Hive offspring materialized in the communal nurseries where they had been born. Ethereal crystal children manifested in the singing chambers where their families had mourned them for years. Each child was accompanied by a figure that witnesses described as a shadow with burning eyes, clearly human in basic shape, but existing, partially outside normal reality. The Shadow Guardians would ensure the children were safely reunited with their families, then vanish without a word. Dr. Helix from the Convergence analyzed the few sensor readings they managed to capture of these manifestations. The transformed humans appear to have retained their essential protective instincts while gaining the ability to exist across multiple dimensional phases simultaneously. They are no longer bound by normal physical laws. 3 days after the first children returned, Ambassador Zekthara received a final transmission from the Umbral Collective. The image was barely coherent, flickering between visibility and transparency. Council, help us. The humans. They have found our home realm. They are coming. Please. The transmission cut off in a burst of static that left the communication, equipment smoking. 6 hours later, Commander Chen contacted the Council directly. Ambassador Zekthara, this is to inform you that the Umbral threat has been permanently resolved. Their primary facility has been destroyed, their leadership eliminated, and their remaining forces scattered to dimensions where they can no longer threaten normal space. What about the Umbral survivors? Zekthara asked. Any Umbral who renounced child harvesting and provided information about missing children were allowed to live in exile in distant dimensions. Those who refused. The commander's voice carried a finality that made Zekthara shiver. They learned that some things are unforgivable. Over the following weeks, all 3,000+ missing children were returned to their families. The process was handled with such precision that many families received their children back within hours of their disappearance. From the children's perspective, the traumatic memories of their captivity had been carefully edited from their minds, leaving only vague dreams of a dark place where kind shadows had kept them safe until they could go home. But the transformed humans did not return to normal space. They established a presence around Earth that was visible only to the most sensitive instruments, a fleet of shadow ships that existed between dimensions, crewed by beings who had once been human, but were now something more. A new protocol was added to the Galactic Communication Network, Emergency Channel Omega, for threats to children of any species. The channel connected directly to the human shadow fleet, and the response time was measured in minutes rather than hours. The galaxy's criminal organizations quickly learned to avoid any activities involving children. Those who ignored this unwritten law simply disappeared, along with any facilities they operated. No evidence was ever found, no trials were held, and no explanations were given. They were simply gone, as if they had never existed. Ambassador Zekthara updated the galactic protocols with a new section. Under no circumstances should any member species, organization, or individual threaten, harm, or exploit the children of any sentient species. Enforcement of this directive has been permanently delegated to the human shadow fleet. Violations will result in immediate and absolute consequences. He also added a personal note to the files. Humanity has evolved beyond their original biological limitations while retaining their fundamental values. They have become the galaxy's guardians of the innocent, existing in the spaces between worlds to ensure that no child anywhere in the galaxy will ever again suffer as theirs did. Years later, when other species told stories to their own children, they would often include tales of the Shadow Guardians, beings of light and darkness who watched over all children everywhere, making sure they were safe from the monsters that lived in the dark. The children would ask if the Shadow Guardians were real, and their parents would look up at the stars and say, "They are as real as a parent's love for their child, and that's the most real thing in the universe." On Earth, the planet remained empty of human life but perfectly maintained by automated systems. Sometimes travelers passing through the system reported seeing figures moving through the abandoned cities, tall shadows with burning eyes that seemed to be keeping watch over something precious. The humans had become something new, something that existed beyond normal space and time. They had sacrificed their physical existence to ensure that no other species would ever have to endure what they had endured. And in the deep places between dimensions, where shadow ships moved through realms of twisted physics and impossible geometries, the transformed humans continued their eternal patrol. They had become the